All right, so we have something brand new coming to you on the Farzad channel. The Maverick Mind with Larry Goldberg is officially official. And Larry is here with me today to introduce this new concept to our wonderful audience. Larry, if you're not familiar, is a person, an individual that is immensely impressive, has an extreme amount of wisdom. I can't tell you how much I've learned from him just from I don't know, it feels like we've known each other forever, but we just started working together very recently. And I've already felt like I've just learned so much from Larry. And one of the unique value propositions of Larry for this channel specifically is that he's somebody that is going to speak to a lot of very interesting individuals about very interesting things. And they are things that only Larry can talk about because he is a very unique person that has a very unique set of skills and experiences. So Larry, help us get our head wrapped around the Maverick Mind and why it's going to be the greatest podcast of all time.
I don't know about that, Farzad, but I will tell you this. The idea of a Maverick Mind has intrigued me for many years, mainly because in a way I consider myself a form of a maverick. And, everybody on this channel, I believe, and you and I and Hans are all extremely interested in Elon Musk. And
Yes.
Elon Musk is the ultimate Maverick Mind. He is the embodiment of a Maverick Mind. So Maverick, what do we mean by Maverick? So it suggests creativity, innovation, and the courage to go against the grain when necessary. It means a rebel who is unconventional, independent, and who doesn't think and behave in the same way as other people. Mavericks are independent, they're confident, they're decisive, and they're self-starters, and they generally respond positively to pressure. People who are mavericks are, they're assured in their ability to handle most people and problems. Sometimes that assuredness is a problem in itself.
I would say oftentimes.
Oftentimes, they can have a stimulating influence on others. They're direct, they're determined, they're still relatively flexible. They regard failure as a positive.
Yes.
It's a learning experience, a necessary step in an upward trajectory. So when we talk about Maverick Mind, we're talking about some pretty special people. And, in my eventful life, I've had the privilege of meeting many who I've identified as Mavericks and have been fascinated to follow the arc of their lives. And it's convinced me that we can learn a great deal from them, whether we aspire to their footsteps or not. So my intention is in the Maverick Mind to bring on board and talk to people who are mavericks. And there are many mavericks that abound in the Musk universe. And I'm going to go far beyond the Musk universe, but certainly I'm going to interview mavericks from within the Musk universe.
Yeah.
So every episode, I'll introduce a maverick and talk with them in depth to gain insight from their novel lives. I want to talk about them, their experiences, their lives, and how they got to where they are and what inspired them and drove them to be the mavericks they are.
So exciting. I mean, I can tell you just as honored to be the platform that's going to bring this forward to the audience, truly. So thank you so much, Larry, for making that decision and bringing that forward for our audience. I think as a viewer, knowing Larry, knowing just his wisdom, his experience, his knowledge, and the people that he knows and the people that he's talked to and the people that he's going to speak with on this platform, which I think is going to surprise some by how interesting these people are and who these people are as well. We'll keep that close to our vest. I think it's going to be, for me, I am so interested in knowing more about people who have made a difference, about people that are just vastly different than what we call the norm, and as a person who is fascinated by outliers and outsiders, I think this is going to give me the ability to really understand how these people are wired and why they're wired the way that they're wired.
And you'll be very excited as to who our first Maverick is going to be.
by far your worst guest.
So our first Maverick, I'm going to announce to our audience, is going to be none other than Farzad. So
Sorry.
Well, you're a prototypical Maverick, Farzad, and so I'm going to be very excited to interview you. And we did have an interview in a Holiday Inn in Austin. And that's the other thing about the Maverick Mind. We're going to be meeting, very informally, possibly not in a studio, sometimes in a studio, depending on where we're able to meet and where we're able to meet up.
Yeah. And it's a true honor, Larry. I think this podcast is going to be amazing. I really think it's a very unique thing because, one of the things that I mentioned when we were throwing this idea around is usually Larry would be the guest, right? Because Larry has had so many experiences. He has built so many successful companies. He's just an amazing individual, just kind, warm, knowledgeable, has so much wisdom. But it's rare to have somebody of his caliber being the host. And what does that mean from the perspective of the questions he can ask, the insights he can provide, the people that he can speak with? I think that's the very unique thing about the Maverick Mind. And so I'm super excited to see where this goes. Again, honored to be your first guest. I'm sure I'm going to be by far the least interesting of them all, because of everyone you're going to speak with. But again, I'm very honored, and I think the audience will really enjoy it. So without further ado, here is Larry with me.
Tell us about, where were you born?
So I was born in Spain. My parents are from Iran. They left Iran in 1979 during the revolution. They were looking to find education opportunities. During that time, it's crazy stuff happening there. So they landed in Spain. That's where they had me and my brother. My brother and I, we were both born in Spain. I was born in 1970s. So were they
newly married? They were married before they went to Spain?
They were married for a year or two before they went to Spain. So they basically, they got married and bounced. They were 20, 21 years old, I believe, when they moved. And then they had me in Spain and my brother. 1987, I was born. And then after 12 years, my dad, the economy was not very, the economy has never been good in Spain, I feel like. It's one of those countries where it's heavily dependent on tourism, and beautiful country, beautiful people, but it's struggled economically. And so my dad's side of the family, a lot of them live in the States. And they came to the States to find opportunities.
Were they already in the States, the rest of your dad's family? Or
yeah, a lot of them were.
A lot of them
were.
Yeah. And was that as a result of the revolution, or did that happen from before?
Yeah, it was the diaspora. It's just after the revolution happened, a lot of people have left Iran, and they've landed it all over the world. It's sort of similar to how it has happened to the Jewish people, in the past. So it's kind of like a more recent thing. So, so a lot of my mom's side is still in Iran. A lot of my dad's side is in the States.
Have you been to Iran? Have you been back to Iran?
Yeah, I was there twice. I was young though. I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old for my first time, and then 10 or 11 for my second time.
And any memories of it?
Some, yeah. Hanging out with cousins and the uncles and the grandparents and stuff. They have these beautiful, I don't know if you've ever been, but they have this beautiful mountains around the city of Tehran, which is the capital. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I have flown over Tehran.
Okay.
Never been to Tehran.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And we flew from, I guess, we were in the Gulf, and we were flying back, and we flew right over Tehran, the mountains. It's stunning. Yeah. Stunning country.
Beautiful. Yeah. It really is. It's one of those things where I really hope they can figure out how to start opening up to the rest of the world, because it's such a terrible sort of thing that's happening where, I just hope that the Iranian people are able to sort of experience more of the rest of the world.
Yeah, Iran is such an incredible country. It has such enormous talent and such enormous resources and such history. A beautiful country. And, it really is formative in Western history.
Yeah, for sure.
So it would be incredible to see Iran flourish.
Yeah.
So you were born in Spain. Does that So do you have Spanish nationality as well?
I do, yeah.
So you came to the United States and you grew up where? What city?
Yeah, so we lived in New Jersey for 3 years in Montclair. For about 3 years, and then we moved to Pennsylvania in 2002. I want to say Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Shout out Bethlehem, and that's where I lived for about 17 years. And then my wife and I moved to Texas in 2020. And so we lived there for a little bit. Some of my dad's family lived in New Jersey, and my dad was able to find work in New Jersey, and that's kind of how we ended up in New Jersey. And then what ended up happening is the real estate in Jersey is way more expensive than the real estate in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So all you need is like a 1 hour commute to go to work, and then your house prices are like a fourth, to a third. And so my parents are, they're starting from nothing, restarting again for the second time, really, because when they went to Spain, they restarted. They came to America, they restarted again. And it's like now thinking back, that journey is unbelievable, because they were about my age when they decided to pick up and leave Spain to come to the States with basically nothing and 2 kids. And I'm like, how? I would never do that.
Well, they had some support, right? They had.
For sure. My dad's side of the family was instrumental in helping my dad get a visa and supporting him and stuff. They were unbelievably supportive.
This is the classic immigrant story. So
it is.
I had the same support. In this case, my brother was a doctor in Charlotte, and so it was natural for us to come to Charlotte. But I'd come to school here in the States, so it was easier for me.
I see.
So here we are on the journey. You're in Bethlehem. You go to school.
Yep.
You graduate high school.
Yep.
And then
college.
And which college?
Penn State University.
Penn State.
Penn State.
Wow.
We are Penn State. Yeah, that's the thing.
I know.
Number 14 in the country. Come on, we gotta get to the playoffs. Yeah, we went there. I went there for 4.5 years. Actually, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I was initially an aerospace engineer major.
Really?
Yeah, and then I switched over to math in my second year because I don't know. I just felt like I was better at math than physics, which you would think there's a lot of connection and overlap.
All of physics is based upon math.
Yeah, it's derived from math.
But math is a much purer and cleaner study than physics, which I think is a lot of mumbo jumbo. But okay.
But I agree with you because I switched my major and then I'm like, holy crap, I like math less than I like physics. And at that point, I'm like, I'm not going to switch again. I don't want to disappoint anybody. So I forced my way through the program. And actually, in hindsight, it probably has helped me develop like a framework for thinking logically.
Yeah.
I think that has been underrated. And when I think about what I do now, which is just trying to understand what is happening, logically, I feel like that just, even though I'm like dealing with numbers and math, the reality is the way you think about problems is the more important thing, is how you're thinking about approaching how you want to question something, how you want to research something, how you want to analyze something. I think that math background was actually a lot more instrumental than I give it credit for.
Yeah, Elon Musk says that the study of physics helped him understand first principles thinking. But actually, if you want first principles thinking, mathematics.
Yeah.
Because it underlies all of physics.
That's right.
Yeah, so it was very important to me as well, the study of math, because...
Was that your major too?
No, I never went to college.
Okay.
So all of this is self-taught. So my math background is self-taught, and my programming and all the work that I did in decision management is all based upon mathematical.
Do you feel like that's better though? Like almost learning those things from scratch? Because I feel like you learn the lessons way better because you're constantly applying them.
Self-teaching can be very, very dangerous, but it could also be very, very strengthening. It really depends upon how rigorous you are, and it really depends upon not suffering from misdirection early.
Yeah.
Because so many people who are self-taught
That's a good point.
wander in the wilderness. And I found myself wandering in the wilderness sometimes, but I'm very, very, I've read very, very widely. And so my reading gives me a very solid background. And I read the classics. I always tell the story of Winston Churchill, who did terribly at school because he hated Greek and he hated Latin, and that's all they really taught in those public schools. He did very well at English, but that didn't rate very highly in English public schools. He went to Harrow. But when he was in India, in the army went to sleep in the hours between 11 in the morning and like 4 o'clock in the afternoon because of the heat in India. Well, he didn't sleep. He just read his way through 5 years.
Interesting.
And so he was so invested in the classics, and that gave him his writing. But enough about that. So you graduated college.
I did, yeah.
And then?
Yeah, and then after that, so I graduated in late 2009, in the middle of the Great Recession. So I was, at that time, $100,000 in debt or something, with a math degree, a statistics minor, and it was very difficult to find work, right? Because I wasn't really sure at that time, do I want to be an actuary? Do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to be an analyst? I was lost, to be honest. Like at that time in my life, I went to college because I felt like I had to go to college. You know, it was one of those things where if I didn't go to college, my parents probably wouldn't be very happy. I felt some societal pressure to do it, but at the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was kind of like I was still trying to figure out who I was. Because, you know, when I came to the States at 12 years old, I left a social group of friends behind that I was close to. And then I had to restart that in the States. And by the time I developed the language to be able to connect with people, I had to decide what I wanted to do with my life, right? And at that point, I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do, right? So college was kind of like a place for me to develop a little bit of who I am, but also try to figure out what I want to do. But the problem is when I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, like truly didn't. So I started sort of like trying, you know, I applied to be an actuary. I applied for the testing to be an actuary. I failed it. I didn't perform very well. I was never a good tester.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. in hindsight, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So that didn't work out. I started applying to get teachers, so I took like the praxis exams and whatever. And then after I passed those, I'm like, you know what, that just don't feel like that's going to be a good career for me.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening was I remember applying to GameStop with like a video game shop.
I know
just to be there.
GameStop.
Yeah, GameStop. Yeah, the meme stock.
Yeah, meme stock.
But I was gonna just to make some money because my parents were like, hey, like it's been 4 months since you graduated, like you need to find something. And
we don't have a basement for you.
We don't have a basement for you. There's a great recession, like, and I'm like trying to figure out what I want to do. There's no real work out there for me. It's like I'm like, geez, what the hell am I supposed to do? And then by happenstance, our next door neighbor, Jessica, who is still a dear friend of mine, she worked at it still is there, I believe, a pet food distributor, a pet food and supply distributor, literally our next door neighbor. And she knew I was looking for work. And she's like, hey, talking to my parents one day, I know, you know, Farza's still looking for work. We have a temp job at the company where he can come in and like help us with like marketing materials, you know, like stuff envelopes and stuff. You know, we'll pay him $12 an hour or whatever. And at that point, I'm like, if I don't take it, I'm gonna like literally, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm X thousands of dollars in debt and whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. And I went in and I started working there. And then, like, I'm probably one of the luckiest people in the world because the way my life has sort of, the way doors have opened for me in certain respects, I've been very fortunate to have those doors. Like, if I didn't have Jess as my neighbor, I probably wouldn't be on the path that I am today, because that door opening and me going into the company and working there, you know, the second I was in there, I was like, okay, so I have some sort of job, right? Even if it's a temp job. And then immediately I found myself saying, okay, I need to do as good of a job as I can to make sure that I can come back so I can keep making money, and to show people that, hey, like, I'm valuable, to make sure that my parents aren't going through more financial craziness, because that time was very, very difficult. So that was a very big driving factor for me, you know, once I was in there.
So you should just stop and listen to yourself for a second.
Okay.
Because what you're talking about is just how fortunate you were. But I'm a guy who believes you make your luck. Mm-hmm. And your drive in that job is what made your luck.
I capitalized on the opportunity that was given to me. Yeah. And I think that's one way that I can define my life, is that I've capitalized on opportunities. You know, and that's why I tell a lot of people is like I think I've been fortunate in identifying the opportunities that have been in front of me and realizing that they're opportunities, you know?
You see, that's the Maverick in the Maverick mind. How many people actually rise to the state that they can understand that a full-time job where they kind of make the job for you, blicking stamps or mailing or doing whatever, is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. It can turn into something way bigger than it is if you are able to show your worth. That's it. Right? And that to me was very intuitive for me.
That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a very intuitive thing because, you know, why wouldn't you want to hire somebody that brings a lot of value? Why wouldn't you want to work with somebody that's going to bust their ass and work as hard as anybody else, right? I think the thing that clicked for me later on, like a couple years after I started working there for full time, is that the level of effort an individual can put into work, the average effort from humans, I feel like, especially in like just typical workplaces, is like a 10 out of 100. So even if you're just going at 50 out of 100, you'll shine bright like a star.
Right.
And if you go at 100 out of 100, you have every path possible in front of you. You know.
So there you are.
Especially in this country.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, that's the amazing thing about this country. That's not true in most of the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there you are. You're in a pet food distribution operation.
Shout out Phillips.
Good for them. And you're doing what?
Yeah, I started as literally I was stuffing envelopes, sending out materials, and then the one day they were like, because they were growing. So the one thing about the pet food industry is that they're recession proof. Yeah. Right. Even if the economy's tanking, people are not going to stop feeding their dogs.
My dog is very aware of this.
Exactly. Right. People will. There was a study that we saw. I think like there were a higher percentage of people that would be willing to go out of their way to pay for their dog food and their formula for their children, right? Like it was a wild study. But anyway, recession proof. So the company was growing like crazy, right? Another lucky thing. 2010.
2009.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And it's still being led by a phenomenal, brilliant leader, Blaine Phillips. Like
By the way, there's continuity here because my company was bursting out of the seams in 2009.
Oh, really? Okay.
Anyway,
that's awesome.
About you.
Yeah, no. So what kind of company was that?
Software. We were in
software. Okay.
We were in very unique position in software.
Okay.
Because we were inventing the foundations of AI. Mm-hmm. We were inventing the foundations of anyway. This is about you.
Okay.
So,
okay. And then, so what happened was they were in dire need of help with analysis specifically. They didn't have enough talent in the company. Like, they didn't have enough people. When I say talent, they were talented people. They didn't have enough people to be able to help them with analytics and analysis and stuff like that. And with my math background, and I knew some Excel, I was like, hey, I'll if it's there, you know, because they were like, hey, do you know how to use Excel? I'm like, yeah. Like, can you help us with a few things? Which I think was their way of like, hey, maybe we can bring this guy full time, right? Instead of a temp. And another door opened for me. I'm like, hey, I'm going to grab that and go. And that morphed into an analyst position, which then morphed into a business intelligence manager position, which then morphed into a pricing manager, which then morphed into a director with a pathway to become an executive. Wow. Right? So like over the span of 7 years, I went from a temp to a director overseeing the business intelligence and pricing strategies for a $1 billion company.
So your knowledge of math coupled with your skill at Excel.
Yeah.
And your less than modest personality drove this.
I think so.
So the university education was critical to your success.
I think it was definitely helpful for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%. I actually think critical is probably the right word, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you are. In 7 years, you went from a temp
Yeah.
in a job that your neighbor, got you.
Randomly.
Not randomly, because you had a good relationship.
Yeah.
You built a good relationship.
Yeah.
And she got you this job. It was, we call it in our language, rochmonis, helping a poor guy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And
that's a good definition.
Yeah.
100%.
There's a lot of parallels in our background. Anyway, so there you are. You're a rising star. 7 years. You're at the top of the game.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. So in year 6, there was a leadership turnover at Phillips where Blaine, Cheryl, a lot of like the guys that I've worked with very closely. I'm not really sure what happened, but they stepped away from the business. This was right after a sale of the company. I think there was some friction at the top, and I think the bankers wanted to put us in somebody else. But they put in a new CEO, Todd, which another really talented guy, and I worked with him. So at that time, I was reporting directly to the CEO, the CFO, and the executive for all the data and security and stuff like that, Brian, and other guys too. So I was basically direct reporting to the executives. I went to a bunch of the executive meetings. I mean, I learned how a corporation operates because of Phillips. Like I learned how CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, COOs think about business, and that was probably the most valuable, one of the top 3 most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life.
Yeah.
Is just understanding how an executive operates.
Yeah.
That was the fact that I got the opportunity to go in there in those meeting rooms and even be helpful in a lot of ways, and not just bringing data, but bringing insight and giving my, sort of my intuition and stuff like that. That was insane. So what happened was there was a leadership change, and they were looking to move the headquarters down from Pennsylvania and Easton, which is right next door to Bethlehem. It was a 15-minute drive for me, from Easton down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And at that time, they were offering me, a pathway for me to go down there, and basically a pathway to become an executive at some point at the company. And my wife and I were both like, do we want to do this, right? The company was in a good spot, but you could tell that growth had stalled. And the leadership changed, and the culture was different. Like I didn't really feel the usual, like when Blaine was there, he was he had a very good vision and very good understanding of the pet industry. He was also very easy. He was just a really nice guy to work with. Not that Todd wasn't. Todd was awesome too. But Blaine was the pet industry. Like this is the guy you want to be with.
So Blaine was the CEO?
The CEO of Phillips. Yeah, and it was a family-owned business.
The family sold.
The family sold.
Blaine was part of the family.
Correct.
They sold the business.
Yeah. Multiple times. They sold it multiple times.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They sold to.
How do you get to sell a thing multiple?
Well, he had. I think he sold a percentage of the.
I see.
Yeah. So that happened. That transaction happened multiple times. But I think at some point, maybe I don't think he had majority stake anymore, and that's why he was pushed out. I still have no idea what the hell happened, but it was not good. He's back now, by the way. He went back to Phillips like a few years ago. I think they realized that what they did.
So this is a multi-billion-dollar company, or
1.2 in revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they went to Charlotte. You didn't go to Charlotte.
I chose. I wasn't sure, and that's when I started looking, right? And that's how I ended up finding that Tesla position in Bethlehem.
So Tesla was this giant auto company at that point?
And by then, let me give you some background there. In 2012, my obsession started with Tesla. In 2012. And this was 2017.
Oh, wow.
So I was a Tesla geek for 5 years. I was the guy, still am to some respects, that would not shut up about Tesla, even at work. Guys, this company, you don't understand. Elon Musk is going to be the richest person in the world.
Is it true that most of these early Tesla guys were Mavericks?
I would say so for sure. I would say
Because,
so.
in the realm of Mavericks, I've met a lot of Mavericks.
I think it's a magnet for that kind of person.
And I am intrigued by Mavericks, being one myself.
Sure.
Truly intrigued by Mavericks. And the Mavericks at every level in society. I mean, it's very interesting. But people who will not be imposed upon by societal, by expected norms, not societal norms, but expected norms.
Yeah.
So here we have this guy.
Yeah.
Who's a math major.
Total rando.
A total rando. Who's obsessed with Tesla.
Yeah.
Who's been obsessed with Tesla since 2012.
Yeah.
Did you have stock in Tesla?
Yeah. My first stock was December 5th, 2012. And the reason why I did that in 2012 was because I saw the only path for me to gain financial security, period, was to figure out how to build wealth. And just collecting a paycheck, to me, didn't seem like the best way to build wealth.
When did you pay off your student debt?
Believe it or not, I'm still paying for it because the interest rate is very low. So I'm using the cash somewhere else.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, but I mean, so my net worth, I mean, it's in a very, very good spot.
Yeah. Let's
just say that. So I started from, that was at the time when I was $100,000 in debt. I was negative 100,000.
How much of your drive came from your student debt?
A lot. Like, I would say a combination of the student debt and helping my parents. Like, it always makes me emotional thinking about it, honestly. Rewarding them in some way that I can for everything that they've given me was a huge forcing function for me to try to obtain wealth in some way, because like I was inspired to retire them. Like that was a huge thing. Like I need to retire my parents because I saw how stressful it is to pick up and go in your late 30s, early 40s, when you basically have almost nothing and you have support,
Right.
So that was like a huge driver for me. It's like, I need to do something to make sure this doesn't happen ever again.
And in this entire period from the pet food, from the start of the pet food to the point where Charlotte is in the offing and you're looking, you got married.
Yeah, I got married in 2016. Yeah, 2016. I met my wife in 2014. 4 years after I started working at Phillips. And then I got married in 2016. Yeah, so it was like this kind of like insane transition. I feel like I've been on a rocket ship since 2012, to be completely honest. I feel like I've just been on a rocket ship from 2012. Like it started with discovering what it really means to build wealth and become financially independent, to realizing how important it is to have drive and to really care about the work that you do, and working for things that really move your heart, move your mind,
right,
or make you passionate.
Right.
Finding the love of your life. I still can't believe she married me. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those insane things.
I understand that feeling, yeah.
For sure. And it's ever since then, I've just been on it feels like a rocket ship. And in working at Tesla, being there for 4.5 years.
Well, we haven't got there yet.
Yeah, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
But we're there.
I'm very passionate.
But we're right there. You're looking. You're looking, and what do you find?
Yeah, so I started looking, and actually, here's the hilarious thing. So my wife and I had a small business at the time in Pennsylvania. Yeah, we had an escape room. You ever hear of an escape room?
Oh, a good friend of mine took me and my wife to this escape room.
Yeah. So we had one in Bethlehem.
Really?
Yeah, human versus room. Yeah, we had an escape room there for 4 years.
Well, what drove you to have the escape room?
I can't really build wealth unless I own the ability to pull the revenue lever and the profit lever. It was another one of those things. It's like driven by figuring out all the different ways that I can build to be able to generate wealth for myself and my family.
So what role did your wife have in this?
She was incredibly supportive in the ideas that I brought up.
Right.
And she is the smartest person I know. And she knows she is a very good she knows how to judge risk better than I do.
Isn't it amazing how we marry people who are smarter than us?
Yes.
And who know better how to navigate life.
And somehow they still want to be with us. Like how? Like what's wrong? Like are they okay? Like what's wrong? You know? Yeah. It's. She has been incredibly instrumental. I would say she is probably the biggest reason why I'm here. It's because she has her support and her ability to just guide and help me really understand who I am and what I want. Yeah. Truly.
And what you shouldn't want.
And what I shouldn't want. She has been just unbelievable. I tell her all the time, I'm like, without you, like, there's no way. Like, I am the best version of who I am because of her. If I don't have her, I can't be the best version of her.
So this escape room started in when?
2016.
2016. So very close to the end of the pet food side.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it overlapped with my time at Tesla. So, so while we had the escape room, the reason why the escape room story came in is one of her friends came into the room, and her boyfriend or husband at the time, maybe boyfriend at the time, husband now. Yeah, boyfriend at the time worked at Tesla. And I was like, they were talking, and she was like, my husband is a giant, Tesla nerd, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yo, yeah, I heard that they're opening a warehouse down the street.
Wow.
And then my wife told me that. I'm like, there's no fucking way. Like, why is Tesla coming to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania? Wow. That's insane, right? So I went up and looked. My wife went on and looked. And sure as hell, they had a posting for an inventory control analyst.
Wow.
In their warehouse in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which was literally 2 minutes down from our business. Literally 2 minutes down from our business.
So you didn't apply for the job?
No, of course not. No. So I'm like, yes, go. I don't care how much they pay. Yes, let's go. And yeah, in that I went through the interview process, and we were able to land on the one thing that Tesla does is like their titles don't match the responsibility. Like they will pay you based on how much value you can bring to the company. And I knew this because I followed the company so closely, right? So I was able to work a compensation package that would actually make sense for me to take the risk to go on this journey for 4.5 years of 80 to 100 hour work weeks and see my wife maybe 2 hours if I'm lucky at night when I get home. You know what I'm saying?
So at this point, is your escape room actually contributing to the family or not?
It is. It was never a huge contributor, but it was something.
And how many hours a day did it take for your time?
Oh man.
I mean, I'm fascinated by this because most people don't understand what small businesses demand of people.
I mean, so I've come to learn that if you are a business owner, I don't think you ever have an off switch. Like I never stop. Like just because I'm not physically there, it doesn't mean that this thing isn't going all the time. Like even when I'm driving before I'm going to, and that's something that my wife has helped me with in a lot of respects, like just fucking disconnect. But it's so hard because you're constantly worrying about the future of the company, making sure that it has everything it takes. Like, oh, what are the things I can do that I'm not doing well right now? Like, am I doing this right? Should we be doing that? Oh, this is a new opportunity. Oh, I need to learn more about this because that could be a new opportunity. Like it's just constant, right? I mean, you know this better than anybody. So, I mean, physically working there, I was, until we hired some help, I was there probably 30 hours a week. Physical on top of my, on top of my other job.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I wasn't there in person, it was just a lot of just, mental work, research, stuff like that. It got better over time, to be honest, because my wife took on a lot of that workload. So by year 2 of the business, my wife, it was like a 90-10, 80-20, because I was at Tesla. So at that point, it's like, there's only so many hours.
So now we get to Tesla.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah, that was fun. That was awesome. It was both the most brutal and incredible experience I've ever had, for sure. Yeah. Professionally, I would say, like in some respects. I think now having a sort of like a media company, it has its own challenges that are very difficult, right. But I think that just the best way I can define Tesla working there, and just for the people that are not aware, so I was on the supply chain side. I was again, inventory control analyst by title when I started. But in reality, my role was to build an entire analytics suite for the distribution network in the States and in Europe and in parts of China. So that was my job. One of them.
As an inventory?
Yeah. As an inventory control analyst. That was one of them. The other job was a process engineer for the inbound, outbound inventory control, right?
Good God.
Yeah. It was also HR management. I mean, it's like whatever you could help with, you do.
I built a supply chain software company.
Okay.
And I know a little bit about what goes into managing the supply chain.
It's hell. Just getting trucks to arrive at the same time is insane. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah, but to build, I mean, a global system is like...
It was daunting, for sure. But I think...
How much software support did you have?
Oh my God. So, really the tools we were using at the time when I started were like Tableau, which was kind of like the dashboarding software. And then we had SQL that we used to pull in all the tables, all the data and stuff. Right. And then as far as support goes, I mean, you just try to find the person that can help you with something. Otherwise, you're on your own. You just gotta figure stuff out by your.
Were people on site, IT guys on site, or was this all
remote? Yeah, we were. Bethlehem was kind of this island for Tesla. Is the best way I can. My time there was so unbelievable, Larry. Like I really, to this day, there's so many stories I could tell. So when I joined the company in 2017, Tesla was going through the Model 3 ramp, right? Oh, sorry. Can you tell?
Yes.
Yeah. When I was there in 2017, Tesla was going through the Model 3 ramp.
Right.
Okay. So they were very, very tied up with the manufacturing process of the company, right? And they were burning cash like crazy. And being on the supply chain side by default meant that we had almost basically zero attention, right? Yeah. Because it's all hands on deck.
Everything was
over there. The Elon laser beam was on manufacturing, which means nothing else got attention, which was both a blessing and a curse. The curse was that we got no help. The blessing is we could do whatever we want. And thank God for Greg, who was the head of the warehouse that we had, Greg Drummond, incredible talent. He was incredibly instrumental in saying, you can literally do whatever you want. And this was the Tesla culture. Like, he really encapsulated, like, do whatever you want. If you mess it up, you have 24 hours to fix it. Otherwise, don't be afraid to test. Do whatever you want. And so what that kind of created this culture in that building of, we're going to try absolutely everything humanly possible to get out of this backlog of parts that we had. So like one of the things that Tesla was facing at the time, they were putting so many Model 3s on the road, and it was creating such a strain on the supply chain because there were not enough service centers and there were not enough parts out there to service the cars. I mean, you saw a lot of the news articles that came out during that time.
I was a victim of that.
Yeah, so it was brutal.
Very early Model 3, yeah.
Yeah, it was completely brutal. So our job was to figure out how to make that better. And so while the guys in California were focused on California shit, we had our ability to just solve the problems ourselves. And so what ended up happening is over the course of 6 to 12 months, we came up with the optimal solutions to the problems. And then every single thing that we figured out how to do better than anyone else, it got applied to the entire network. And that's how things got better. They were basically born out of Bethlehem. It was that little team of, 3 leaders and like 20 to 40 warehouse workers. At one point, our 132,000 square foot building was doing as much, we were sending out as many products out of that little warehouse than the rest of the country combined.
Wow.
Okay. And we were like 1/10 of the square footage of the rest of the country.
Wow.
Okay. So and then people, finally, once people like stopped worrying about the company collapsing because of the Model 3 ramp, they're like, hey, what's Bethlehem doing? Like, what happened there? Like, how come these guys are firing on all cylinders and everyone else is drowning?
How are you getting your supply? How are you getting the inbound?
Yeah, so we had to work with the supply team.
So were you able to get the supply team to pay you more attention than the other guys? How did that?
We just, well, yes, in some way, some respects, yes. So we went out of our way to beg the supply team to work with us better. But the other part of it too is that we got really good at managing the trailer inbound. We got really good at scheduling. We got really good at staggering. We got really good at offloading.
Yeah.
We got really good at staging. We got really good at receiving, right? We got really good at inventory control, so we knew exactly what we had. We got really good at all these different variables that go into just managing a warehouse. The challenge with this is like, this shit is just not sexy.
I know.
Supply chain is, no one wants to do it.
So I built a supply chain software
Exactly.
company. So I know
And now you're
exactly-
here.
Yeah.
because it's, without supply chain, the world collapses.
Yeah.
But no one wants to do it because it's
Nobody
not
wants to.
sexy.
Yeah.
Because it sucks.
And nobody can do it. Everybody does it badly.
Yeah.
It's only a question of how less badly you do it than the other guy.
And that's how we came to prominence. Was that we were less bad than everyone else by a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot. And it was enabled by a culture of just do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
So
is what Tesla enabled for us to have that culture.
So how did the journey end? Why did you not, see a supply chain guru at Tesla today?
Yeah, for sure. So come 2021, a lot of the stock that I had became a substantial amount.
Yeah.
A lot, especially for someone from my beginning and what I know, it was more than I ever could have imagined. And at that point, there was every 4 or 5 years, Tesla goes through this like leadership change at the top. That just kind of like old people, like people go out, new ones come in.
Very familiar with it.
Yeah, and then I had a question to ask myself. So we were in an extremely good financial situation. We reached financial independence, where my wife and I can find our own path, right?
And you're taking care of your parents.
Yeah, my parents are taken care of. Everybody's good. Everybody's happy, right? And so the question becomes, okay, do I want to sign on for another 4 years of what I know is going to be brutal, right? Or is this now the right time to step away, see the world with a wife, start thinking about children and path, like start building my own path, start figuring out what I want to do, like me, like who's Farzad, right? Is Farzad the guy that's always going to work at Tesla, or is Farzad somebody else, right? And so that financial independence allowed me to say, okay, this is the right time to step away, right?
So at the time you stepped away, did you have any sense of building a studio?
No. Zero. The idea was step away, take time off, it will come. Just use the time you have now to figure out what you want to do.
And that gets us to the studio. So I have an inkling of what's going on in the studio. And I don't think a lot of people do understand what little empire you're building here. But
we'll see.
Oh, I have an inkling. And so I have insight. And so how did it all come about? How did you get to where you are now?
By accident. 5 weeks after I left Tesla, in my head, I was like, when I leave Tesla, I'm going to have like a year off. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hang out. I'm just going to drink wine. I'm just going to play video games. I'm going to hang out with my wife. We're going to have such a great time. And then by week 5, I learned a lesson about myself, which is I cannot do nothing. Cannot do it. I will literally drive everyone around me crazy. My wife was like, figure something out. You need to figure something out. Like, please.
I've never learned the lesson because I've never spent as much as 5 weeks.
Yeah, well, I'm jealous. So that was a very huge lesson for me, was like, hey, I need to now I suffer from the other side of it too, which is I do become too involved in this. I burn really hot to the point where I will burn myself out.
Yeah.
I've faced those periods multiple times in my life. I faced them very recently, honestly, where it's just I hit a wall, and then all of a sudden my wife's like, what happened? And I'm like, I just literally have collapsed. Like I can't. So that's something I'm still learning about myself.
How did your Tesla managers manage that?
I think Tesla was the best place for me to go full out with that side of me.
Yeah.
Because that's what the job demands.
So you were able to get through those 4 years without hitting that wall?
I hit it once. Yeah.
And how did they manage that?
Well, they were very understanding. They were very flexible. I mean, honestly, it's like one of those things where after a week or two, I kind of find a new balance. You know, I go from working 80, 90 to maybe 60, 70, something like that.
Some companies don't understand that.
No, they understood it because a lot of people go through that in Tesla. I mean, Tesla is a fucking fire pit. I mean, it's a cauldron. It's brutal. It is not for the faint of heart. It's for people who really, I mean, any Musk company, and really any startup or world-changing company that understands how to maximize results kind of operates in that manner.
I kind of understand that.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were very, very understanding and super, super, super helpful. I mean, I had a full-blown panic attack, to be completely honest, and it took me a couple years to recover from some of the anxiety-induced stuff that I experienced from that. Yeah. So it was tied to a bunch of things, but
okay. Yeah. So we're at the beginning of the studio. We're at the point where the studio suddenly happens.
Yeah.
Or at least Farzad becomes a personality.
Yeah, it was super random. So like 5 weeks in, I saw a video with Joe Justice and Alejandro.
I remember.
Who, you know, they had that one video that went crazy viral, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, he used to work at Tesla. I think it was there for a few months.
Just
like 3 months or something.
Very brief.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh wow. So he was able to kind of give insight, and he seemed like he didn't like violate his NDA. So I'm like reading through the NDA. I'm like, okay, so as long as I'm not saying anything that's gonna impact the company negatively, or if I'm not sharing information that's not publicly known, then I'm safe, right? And so I'm like, okay, so investor since 2012, worked there for 4.5 years, understand the culture inside and out. I have very unique insights, very unique thought process on how to think about the company. Let me put out a video so people can see it. And then like that, people are like, we want more. We want more. I'm like, okay, I have all the time in the world. I have financial security. I can just do whatever I want, you know, for the next whatever long. And then the more I did it, the more I realized that this is probably what I'm meant to do. I think I am meant to be a person or some sort of conduit or something that brings information forward. You know, just because if I really think about my analyst background, my job was to analyze what was happening and communicate what was happening. That's sort of who I am, I think, at the core. It's just I just like understanding the world and I like talking about the world.
So this all started in what year?
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
And here we are 3 years later.
Can I take a sip of my beer now?
Now you're allowed, as long as you don't crack the can.
Okay, well.
So here we are in 2024, the end of 2024, really.
Yeah.
And you reached a point where you're beginning to build an organization.
Yeah.
And where's this going?
Yeah. So number one, I really enjoy building stuff. Number one. Number two, I really enjoy building this specific thing because I've partnered with people that I really love working with. You know, David, you know, Hans, you, right? So I've been able to work with people that I just really love working with. But I think the most important part is I think there's going to be a revolution in media in the coming 5 to 10 years. I think it's inevitable. With the advent of artificial intelligence, with the advent of podcasting, the move away from legacy media, what all this points to, there's going to be new ways of ingesting information. There's going to be new ways of communicating information, right? And I find myself, again, suddenly another one of those doors have opened for me and I'm seizing the opportunity. I have a platform, I have a YouTube channel, I'm a trusted resource for a lot of people. I'm saying, okay, so it seems like I'm in the perfect place to be one of those people that can bring whatever this new thing is, right? This new way of bringing information, this new way of communicating with the public. And so that's what this is now, you know, podcasts, content, you know, all these different things are things that I really enjoy doing. And I've partnered myself with people that are very good at that stuff too.
So if you go back to yourself at your graduation period,
Yeah.
are you a different person?
Yeah. 100%.
And how are you different?
Well, way more confident about who I am and what I want. I'm a lot wiser because I've gone through a lot more experiences.
Right.
You know, I'm much more realistic. I'm still very optimistic, but I used to be very naive about how the world worked before. I was too idealistic. Now I'm more realistic about how the world works. That's another one too. I've learned how to love. You know, I actually know how to love now, which is not something I knew how to do before, I don't think. And yeah, I'm just so different. And I'm a father. You know what I'm saying? I'm a husband. It's like, okay, these are some pretty massive things. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm confident that I'm a good entrepreneur. You know, one of the things that I've always, and we talked about this before, I've had imposter syndrome my entire life. I've always felt like I don't deserve what I have. Always. And it's gotten better. You know, I think the confidence side of me is making me feel more comfortable about, like, I deserve what I have and I know what the path forward is much more than I used to. But there's still a part of me that says, yeah, but you know, what if you're wrong?
In those quiet moments.
Yeah.
Those quiet moments.
It's loud.
Can I tell you, I'll tell you something. You never lose that.
Yeah.
It goes on. And even when you're in your late 70s, it's still there.
Okay.
So Farzad,
Great. Yeah.
so it's been very, very instructive to learn of this passage of yours, this arc of your life. And if we look forward to another 10 years, where do you see yourself?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that I have a vision of my wife and I having 3 kids. Our oldest will be 10. Our youngest maybe will be 6, 5. Freaking running around in the backyard somewhere, throwing the ball. My wife's making sourdough. I don't know. You know,
An American life.
yeah, it sounds pretty good, right? So family is becoming a much bigger part of me. It's kind of like part of my balance thing, right? Is like I've been so go in my entire life. Sometimes it becomes difficult to balance, and so the family part is becoming much clearer for me, and that's been very, very exciting. From a business perspective, I don't know. Like I tell David and Hans this all the time. I think we can be the biggest media company in the world. I think we can be the biggest media company in the world. I don't know how.
I'll tell you a little secret. It's tough.
I'm sure.
It's tough too.
Yeah.
But it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. It was an honor. Truly. Thank you, Larry.
Farzad.
Thank you very much. Awesome. That was great. That was so fun. That was awesome. Okay. And
You're a very